What is staging good for? Staging is there because you have an environment where you do all of your authoring, and once you're done, you'll publish the ready product. You don't just create a new page. Somebody already navigates to it and is wondering, why is this page empty? Let's reload. And they reload and suddenly something appears, but only a little bit. And they're like, this is funny, I'll reload again. And something more appears. This is not what you want. This is all on the content side. Why am I telling you this as DevOps? There is an aspect in staging that we can make you configure. We should make you configure it and not somebody else, because it's a DevOps task. We have two options in Liferay staging. One of them is to stage on this same system, local live. So we'll just have one server which has a particular staging environment, and then we can publish on the same server, on the same database. And we have another option where we go to a remote server. And this remote connection is what we are going to configure right now. This is server-to-server communication, where we have a completely distinct server setup for our staging and authoring environment. Now, in general, staging is implemented through the configuration or through the export and import, we'll almost say, as a LAR file. LAR is Liferay's packaging environment for content. So a packaging file that you can automatically publish to the live site. Data validation is handled by each individual application, which points me to one of the warnings. If you stage between two different systems to a remote system, you better make sure that both are on the same patch level, because we don't test patch level A with patch level B. Does fixpack 27 publish well to fixpack 28 or 31? We don't know. There might be new features, and all of these permutations are just too many, which means you better keep them on the exact same patch level with exactly the same applications deployed to both systems. This is number one that you definitely should be aware of. I've already mentioned will come in two flavors, local live, remote live. Now, local live, given activating staging, we covered that in the fundamentals training, for example, and definitely in the content management training. You switch on local live, you do a few settings, and then you have your staging environment ready. Nothing to ever bother system administration with. However, remote staging is something to be bothered on the technical level. On local live, we use the same server for staging and live environment, so we're just within exactly one system. Technically, it's two different sites. One is not visible to the public, the other one is visible to the public. They both naturally share the same database because they're on a single system, and two different sites on Liferay share the same database. They use the same global scope. Liferay has a global scope where we can have content, and that is shared by both. And the warning that I have given you, make sure that both systems have exactly the same patch level and exactly the same application, is trivial in a local installation, because by definition it's the same, so everything is set there. And we have exactly one staging and exactly one live environment. That's also a limitation of the local live staging, or what you can think of in local live staging. Now it gets more exciting and more interesting with remote live staging, because we do establish a communication channel between two servers. We do separate the database because now we have two servers, meaning they have two logical databases. They might still share the same database server, but those are logically distinct databases. No longer are they accessing exactly the same one. Naturally, we have two servers, so we have a separate global scope, which is kind of unexpected for some, and it's not always clear what you want when you publish, and you also refer to the global scope. One of the big differences, and also one of the new features, or newer features, is you can now finally go through multiple scopes or multiple steps of staging. You can have a authoring, QA, kind of, so content QA staging, and then the actual live server. So you can publish in many different steps. And the last one, you can optionally deploy different plugin versions. As I told you, don't do that, don't try that at home. Unless you are ready for actually, trying it. There is no guarantee that it works, and if you complain, then mark my words, somebody might just answer, yeah, Olaf told you so. Another aspect of staging, this is again something rather in the content side, but as you will get in contact with a staging interface, I'll just briefly cover it here, is page versioning. Think of it as branches in your content where today you can prepare the content for tomorrow and for the upcoming holiday special and for the upcoming return to work specials. So you can prepare many different versions of a site at once. This is all part of staging, but page variations actually are not so much of a DevOps task, but remote staging is. Okay, let's go into what we do when you enable remote live, which you'll find in the staging configuration. Let me quickly go there, and I'm just going to the staging interface, and we can easily set up staging here through the interface where none is selected. You can choose local live, that's trivial. You can choose remote live, and then make all of the settings. However, we can't just switch on remote live staging. We got to do something about it. Not everybody is allowed to access Liferay servers through the remote API. So we have some safeguards in there, and unfortunately it involves Portal X properties. So you're good for a restart right now. We will need a shared secret between the two servers. So yes, there is some shared secret configured, but it's actually one of the values that you do want to change, because it's a shared secret not between you and the world, but it's a shared secret between the two servers involved in this remote staging. Also, every server, as it says here, each server needs to have the tunneling servlet authentication verifier enabled. And what that is, you will find that within the exercises. There's also an explanation later on in the course. We have general guidelines for staging. One of them is staging is always hard to bring in later in life. When you know you want staging, do so. Switch it on as early as possible. Don't start with non-staging only to activate staging later. And publish often, early and often, with smaller data sets. What does that mean? Well, we don't want you to make the experience that publishing 2 gigabytes of data actually takes some time to travel over the wire and be inserted into the database and written onto disk and unzipped, compressed, and tears down your portal for a while during the publication process. You don't want to figure that out when it's just the day before your release. So the more often you publish, the smaller the data sets that you publish, the easier, the quicker, and the more robust staging is. There is no hard limit where I would say, hey, make sure to never be above 4 gig or 2 gig or 1 gig. There's just the general rule of thumb. If you can go early, do so. And if you switch it on early, you will be happier with the environment. First of all, you practice. How is all of this staging working, instead of going without it and then only figuring out later that there is something that you didn't think of. And also, there's this little question here, I'm going out of order, local life or remote life, which is better? I'm not imposing that question on you unless somebody has an opinion there. Which is better? Oh, actually, there is a definitive answer to that. I will ask you that question. Which one is better, local life or remote life?
Depends.
It depends. Correct answer. Yes. When I gave you the best practices, publish early, publish often, I also want to give you the common staging issues. This is what people run into, that, basically switch on staging late and then figure out, oh, we have actually some content that references content in another site. I'm publishing site A and I'm linking to site B, which is not yet published. So you might point to a dead link to a page that doesn't exist, or that contains different data than you expect. That just might happen because publishing is on a site-by-site level. That's what you always need to be aware of. Actually, that's what your content people always need to be aware of, not so much you guys. Content references content into another site, and that site references content in the first site. So circular references can really be tricky, but it's basically just an extension on the first point. Too much data needs to be transferred, overloading memory of one of the systems, or network timeouts. Well, we've kind of covered that. Publish early, publish often, publish tiny amounts or smaller amounts. That will definitely help you. And both systems must be of the same version. I think I've covered that as well before, so just keep that in mind. Make it the same version, make it the same deployed plugins. Now configuring staging for local life is trivial. You can just switch it on and it's there. Configuring staging for remote life involves a few more steps. You'll need to have your Tomcat server ready for remote live staging. You'll need to configure the staging server the same way, or not quite the same way. And as I told you, this requires a configuration in Portal X properties. You're good for a restart, unfortunately. And now, naturally, you'll need 2 servers. We have prepared them for you, and they are well documented in the written material in the exercises. That's what you do now. After that, create a new blank site. We will have a screen share for everybody on video if you have not seen Liferay's user interface. After all, this is the DevOps course. You're not supposed to know how to do stuff, how to add content in Liferay. So there will be a screen share to tell you how to create a new blank site, to then also add the remote server IP address, activate remote staging, and test it. And that should be relatively simple, if only because we're omitting one step that I frequently see active in production systems, which is HTTPS. Publishing from one system to another through an unencrypted system is quite often done in production systems. We omit it here. Reason? Trust issues. So we can't, we're working on localhost here, we can't have trusted certificates for our systems, which means we can't share a common trust store, and setting up HTTPS for machine-to-machine communication is just a hassle. So one virtual machine needs to trust the certificate, the self-signed certificate of the other virtual machine, and setting that up we just figured has a lot of potential for failure and frustration in this training. So we'll rather go the safe route here and go with just HTTP only. And to our defense, or to my defense, HTTPS is rather a JVM setup rather than a Liferay setup. It's an application server or Tomcat or web server setup rather than Liferay. So I am safe in the assumption to say, oh, this is out of scope. Luxurious for me, but it's well documented in the various application servers, and that's where you need to do it anyways. Either in Tomcat, in WebSphere, HAProxy, Apache, wherever you interface. Let's go through the review of this chapter. So something creates an environment called the something environment that is separate from your live site. Staging comes in 2 flavors. Well, it kind of gives it away. Of course, staging creates an environment called the staged environment. And it comes in 2 flavors, and those are local and remote. Exactly. You did the remote one, local live, which allows you to use staging on a single server, remote live, which allows you to use multiple servers for staging. Just quick reminder, we didn't configure HTTPS This is left for your own exploration. Self-signed certificates are really messy, but as soon as you have proper host names and proper certificates for your servers, that's a lot easier because your JVM will just trust the other server that it's legit. Now, the next one, both types of staging allow for page versioning. We only discussed this very briefly. There are two different types of page versioning. Site page variations. They allow multiple pages to be modified as a set under one version. And page variations allows for versioning of a single page. Well, that would be a hard question. We didn't really discuss page versioning because, as I said, this is firmly on the content side, but you might want to be aware of if you look at the system and you want to know what is actually staged and why is there something else than I saw last time.